with the EV1s. They'll go to colleges and universities, engineering schools. They'll go to museums and other displays across the country. Other EV1 vehicles are being driven by our engineers, and the other option for the EV1s at the end of their life is recycling. But know that every part of the EV1 is going to be recycled, dismantled through a third party, and then reused. Everything is going to be recycled. We're not just going to crush it and send it off to a landfill.
When I saw the picture of the pile of crushed cars, it hurt. And I thought it was pretty spiteful.
To see on the, on the computer, on the internet, the crushed EV1s that GM did.
It was wrong. It was wrong.
Tragic.
That an excerpt of Who Killed the Electric Car by Chris Payne. Ralph Nader, now after the first debacle of the automakers coming to Washington in their corporate jets, they drove up in fuel-efficient vehicles. Final comment on this.
It's the same kind of window dressing they've been engaged in, especially GM, since the 1939 New York World's Fair. They dangle the electric car, they dangle new kinds of propulsion systems, but it never happens. We're still saddled with the infernal, eternal, internal combustion engine. And GM came yesterday with the Volt. The Volt is going to cost at least $40,000 to $50,000 to anybody who wants to buy it. That's just more window dressing by GM. That's why the management and the board of directors have to be removed completely and put in people who really know how to produce cars that are in consonant with consumer needs and the environment. And we should know that the auto suppliers are really the source of innovation here. There are a lot of brilliant engineers and scientists and management types that are available that have circled around this forlorn, mismanaged industry for years, but have never been given the responsibility for it. And people have just got to get Congress to put numbers on this. You know, the bailout of Citibank, $300 billion on the backs of the taxpayer risk, and another $45 billion in preferred shares for one bank. This so-called bailout could only cost $10 billion if it works, for example, of the taxpayer. And the taxpayer could get 20, 30, 40 billion back in appreciated stock value. So we need to be much more demanding of Congress, and we need to learn more about corporations. And I can give you the website for the multinational magazine, which is multinationalmonitor.org, because without an informed public, we won't realize what the full parameters of this is. Auto workers have shrunken in number by 2/3 in the last 15, 20 years. The UAW has lost 2/3. They have given up tens and tens of billions of dollars, the workers, and that's not coming to the forefront compared to what the government is offering.
I want to thank Wendy Thompson for being with us. We'll follow that trip you take to Washington, D.C., UAW Local 235, former president, helping to organize this auto caravan. Again, that website, Wendy?
www.autoworkercaravan.org.
Thanks for being with us. She's joining us from Detroit today. She'll be in Washington on Monday. And I want to stay with Ralph Nader. We're also joined by Medea Benjamin, longtime grassroots activist and founder of the group CODEPINK, just returned from a week-long citizen diplomacy mission to Iran, where she met with advisors to the Iranian president, 2 women parliament members, NGO leaders, and women's groups. And I want to talk with both of you about the cabinet picks. Juan and I have some questions, starting with Ralph Nader. Just go through the cabinet picks. Again, they have to be approved of Barack Obama, your, former opponent. You ran for president as well, Ralph Nader.
Well, it's symbolized in an article in the newspapers a day or two ago. The headline was, Obama turns to consider liberals for cabinet positions. I mean, after appointing all the heavyweights, keeping Gates as Secretary of Defense, Hillary Clinton as State Department, and other positions, Treasury, for example, coming from Wall Street, the article said, well, it's time now to consider some liberal appointees. Well, what's left? Department of Labor. Now, will David Bonnier, who is a genuine progressive and spent many years in the House of Representatives from Michigan, get the job? That remains to be seen. It's really interesting. As long as liberals and progressives gave Obama a pass during the election and didn't demand anything in return, he knew that he had their votes and he had their support regardless, and moved to the corporate. And that's reflected in the appointments that he has been putting in place. Now we look forward to the second level. Who's going to be Food and Drug Administration head? Who's going to be the head of the Auto Safety Agency, or EPA? Will so-called liberals and progressives get their share of the Obama administration? At that second level, it remains to be seen, but the signs are not very auspicious.
Well, the New York Times was reporting today that he may name California Congressman Javier Becerra to be the U.S. Trade Representative, and Becerra has been a critic of free trade agreements in the past. But in general, have you been surprised by the number of former Clinton administration officials that he has named?
Who hasn't? He defeated Hillary Clinton in a close race, and now he's reinstalling the Bill Clinton administration. Now, there are two interpretations, briefly here. One, it could reflect his insecurity. That way, by putting Clintonites all over the government and keeping Gates, he's basically eliminating a lot of potential centers of criticism and challenge to his administration after January 20. The second interpretation is more benign, and that is that he wants to elevate the State Department so it isn't dominated by the Defense Department and the security apparatus, and push for a more benign foreign policy with more vigorous diplomacy instead of brute force, more attention to infectious diseases, environmental issues, land erosion, agricultural cooperatives, etc., which are much cheaper than ballooning a huge, wasteful military budget. And if that is his goal, then the fact that he's put Gates there for at least a year means that there isn't a new Secretary of Defense to build up a powerful base to dominate State Department, and putting Hillary, who's a world-recognized figure, regardless of her policies, into State Department, which will elevate the State Department. That's the more benign approach, but we'll see how it plays out.
What about Marine General Jim Jones, nominated as National Security Advisor? Interestingly, President Bush's first National Security Advisor, of course, was Condoleezza Rice. She came from the board of Chevron. That's exactly where Marine General Jim Jones comes from. Jim Jones comes from Chevron and the board of Boeing, and the chief executive of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Institute for 21st Century Energy, which has been criticized by environmental groups for, among other things, calling for the immediate expansion of domestic oil and gas production and issuing reports that challenge the use of the Clean Air Act to combat global warming.
Well, Jim Jones is basically the representative of what President Eisenhower cautioned us about, the military-industrial complex. He's experienced, he's clever, and now he's in the White House. So the question is, who's going to run what? Is Obama going to transform Jim Jones? Is Obama going to transform all these establishment appointees? Or are they going to, in effect, transform him in contrast to his more liberal rhetoric? It's very hard to appoint people with fixed opinions, fixed constituencies around the country of vested power, and say, well, we're going to use these to change America, because if they change, that will give great credibility, and that will offset the corporate power structure from Washington, D.C. You know, that's never been done before, Amy. Usually when you appoint people who have fixed positions, who have experience in set ways, who represent the power structure, they're not about to be steered into a progressive path of hope and change by someone at the top in the Oval Office.
Well, Medea, you just returned. Medea Benjamin, you just returned from Iran, and with conversations with various people in the Iranian government and civil society. What's your sense of how they're viewing the Obama presidency and what it holds in store for them?
They're very cautious. The young people were excited about Barack Obama. The political leaders, not so. They say we're not really interested in words and talk about hope and change. We want to see some real change in policy. We are concerned, they tell us, about the Secretary of State, about Hillary Clinton, about Rahm Emanuel, about several other of the people that are advising the president-elect. They look at people like Dennis Ross, who said recently in a Newsweek article that the Bush administration wasn't doing enough to push Iran. There are a group of people that are surrounding Barack Obama that have said that sanctions should be tightened, are talking about a